Last week I talked about a remarkable trip into Romania. I believe God used that trip to help bring down communism and a horrible dictator by the name of Nicolae Ceausescu who hated Christianity. Today I want to share about the Killing Fields in Cambodia and trying to get Bibles into Vietnam. I had returned to Bangkok for a missions conference I had attended in the past. It was always challenging to meet with believers from access restricted countries. I left these conferences with a great desire to assist in any way that I could. The speakers themselves were humble men and women, but very powerful spiritually. They had all experienced severe persecution, like jail or prison, and in one particular case, a woman whose husband had been martyred for his faith. As the 3 day conference wrapped up, we had an opportunity to pray for these brave believers as they returned to their countries. A woman approached me. She knelt in front of me for prayer. A ministry leader came to me and said, "This woman was the wife of a man we had provided Bibles for. He then carried them into China for house church Christians. On his last trip, he was caught and arrested. He was transported to a prison where he was tortured. Authorities wanted to discover who he was taking Bibles to and where had he gotten the Bibles from. But he would not reveal the names of the other Christians that these men wanted. Some of his torture involved hanging him upside down and beating him with clubs. He did not break and reveal the names of believers that he was in the ministry to help. He eventually died from these beatings. Authorities contacted his wife and let her know what had happened to her husband. Now, this godly woman was kneeling in front of me wanting prayer. I was so overwhelmed. I wept. I needed prayer from her, not the other way around. Some coworkers and I were going to travel into Cambodia and then to Vietnam to encourage and bless the believers there. We carried Vietnamese Bibles with us to be delivered to house church Christians, but first we were going to fly into Phnom Penh, Cambodia. We were going to meet with and encourage some believers there. Cambodians had suffered greatly under the Khmer Rouge back in the 70s. Millions of people were killed under the leadership of Pol Pot and his regime. His goal was to turn Cambodia into an agricultural nation, so anyone who was educated, a teacher, a business person, if you were caught wearing glasses, these were all signs that you were educated and you were forced to work raising crops in the countryside. Cities were nearly depopulated with everyone forced into agricultural work. Those the government believed were dissidents were taken out to remote areas and killed. Others were put into schools that had been converted to prisons. I tell you, we saw evidence of just unbelievable, unspeakable torture of these people. We were also taken out to the Killing Fields. These were areas of mass graves, and we saw monuments like these. where they had structures filled with skulls and human bones of people who were killed out on these in these killing fields. It was an experience, an experience I'll never forget. Even at the time when we visited there were trees that had dark stains on them, and we found out it was the blood of babies who had been smashed against the trees. This for me was as bad as what we had saw and experienced at Auschwitz in Poland. I just couldn't comprehend the kind of hate it took to treat other humans this way. Our pastor contact took us into the red light district of Phnom Penh. There's so much prostitution, there's drug trafficking that's going on, there's the selling of young girls. It was all very quite pitiful. The pastor would not let us out of the cars so that we could walk and pray. He said it wouldn't be safe for us. Later that night, we had a service in his church, and the Spirit of God moved mightily. People were invited to come forward for prayer. The power and presence of God was so great the people could not stand when they were prayed for. A lady came forward for prayer. She was dressed lavishly. She was prayed for and gave her life to Jesus Christ. We found out that she was the leading madam in Phnom Penh. She had more prostitutes working for her than any other leaders in that city. I thought this was rather exciting. We were seeing God answer our prayers over this ravished country. We had gone to a restaurant. Our friends took us to a restaurant, and they had cages there, and they had bears in these cages. We weren't allowed to feed them, but it was rather interesting to have bears in a restaurant where you're trying to eat food. The city streets were very much like this. Lots of motor scooters. You could see 2, 3, 4, or more people riding together on a scooter. So after our time in Cambodia was completed on this particular trip, we were going to be flying to Saigon. We had prayed much over the safety of our Vietnamese Bibles. We landed and we were ushered into the terminal for baggage checks, and we happened to get a picture of one of the customs officials, a border guard, checking people's luggage. Our bags went through the x-ray machines, and the guards decided to search our luggage. Well, they found the Bibles. This was my second experience getting caught carrying scriptures into a restricted country. I was not happy. Then it was like rubbing salt in an open wound when the other security people came over and they were laughing at us and congratulating the guard who had caught us. But what bothered me most and what made me especially feel bad was for the believers who would be deprived of having their own copy of God's Word. We were allowed to continue on. After all, we were tourists and we had dollars to spend. Later, a key house church pastor visited us in our hotel. He didn't seem to be too greatly troubled about us losing the Bibles. He said that these things happened. We trust the Lord for the results, he says. He also indicated that other teams had been caught and had their Bibles confiscated. Now, this pastor, had spent several years in prison for his faith. Later that evening, we were invited to minister in a house church. We found out a rather interesting experience of this pastor. He said prior to going into prison, He was so busy, he didn't have a lot of time for prayer. But when he was in prison, he said he had much time for prayer. And the Lord revealed to him that this was going to be the key to his ministry upon his release. When he finally came out of prison, he notified the church people, and he told them that they were going to begin every day with at least 2 hours of prayer in the morning, and for those who could attend to do so. But they would commit this time to prayer. Nothing was going to be more important than that. And he found out as a result of this, his church just grew exponentially with many new believers coming into relationship with Jesus Christ. We had a great time of fellowship with these believers. We worshiped together, we prayed together, and in spite of the restrictions on the church and the ongoing persecution, these believers celebrated their relationship with the Lord. The next day after this, we flew back to Bangkok. We met with the team for debriefing. That night, we visited a night market to pick up some trinkets for the people back home. But I knew in my heart I would be coming back here again. Trips don't always turn out in the way that we plan. Still, we realize the Lord is in control, though we may not see the reason right away when things go wrong. So, if you are encouraged by these podcasts, please consider getting a copy of my book entitled The Faith Adventure. It tells a lot of interesting stories that we've had over the years ministering to Christians who are living in persecution. They're available online wherever books are sold, in particular like Amazon. And also, please hit the like and share buttons below. Now, until next time, thanks for listening.